The regiment landed at dawn. 2,000 Astra Militarum soldiers from the 114th Cadian Shock Troops. Boots on a world called Veranthos, for that none of them had heard of 3 weeks ago. The briefing was simple. Hold the Helvian Line. Deny the Archenemy, the refinery district. Wait for reinforcement. Nobody said how long. The trenches were already dug by the regiment they were replacing. The 9th Arovian Infantry. Nobody could find anyone from the 9th Arovian Infantry to ask about conditions. That told you everything. The ground. Veranthos IV had once been a manufacturing world. Forge stacks on the horizon. Promethium pipelines running beneath the entire continent. The Chaos assault had been burning for 11 months before the 114th arrived. The ground was grey ash over compacted mud over rockcrete rubble. It did not drain. It did not dry. The sky was the colour of a bruise from horizon to horizon, because the Archenemy's sorcerers had done something to the upper atmosphere that nobody in command would explain. The trenches were 6 feet deep and 4 feet wide, timber framed where timber was available, bare mud walls where it was not. The fire steps were uneven. The duck boards floated. You learned quickly not to step off the duck boards. The equipment, every guardsman carried a lasgun, a bayonet, 4 charge packs, a folding, entrenching tool, a mess tin, a water canteen, a respirator mask, a ground sheet, and a copy of the Imperial Creed, small enough to fit in a breast pocket. Flak armor covered the torso, shoulders, and upper legs. It stopped shrapnel at range. It stopped lost bolts at range. It did not stop bolter rounds. It did not stop blades. Rations were issued in tinselled blocks, compressed grain meal, a paste of unidentified protein, and a single sachet of recaf powder. 1 block per man per day. On days when the supply lines were shelved, half a block. On days when the supply lines were destroyed, nothing. Commissar Orson Vec walked the line every morning, 31 years old. 4 men already shot for cowardice. He carried a bolt pistol and a power sword he had never needed to draw, because every man on the line understood that cowardice meant death, and death in the trench at least came with a funeral prayer. The Archenemy forces were designated Warband Kethavar in the regimental briefings. Chaos undivided, operating under a warlord referred to only as the Flayed King. His forces had been grinding through Veranthos for 11 months and had taken 3 of the 5 major manufacturing districts. They held the eastern refinery. They were pushing for the central one. At night you could hear them, not movement, not shelling. Sounds with no mechanical explanation. Voices that seemed to originate inside the skull. Laughter. Screaming that rose and fell at regular intervals for hours. The regimental priests walked the trench line at dusk, burning censers of blessed incense and leading the men in prayer. It helped some of them sleep. Most of them, it did not. Chaos. Space Marines came rarely, but when they came fast, and from directions that made no tactical sense. A single Marine could kill 12 Guardsmen in close quarters before being brought down by massed loss fire. The men learned not to engage at close range. Fall back, concentrate fire, aim for the joints, aim for the eye lenses, never the chest plate, never the pauldrons. Keep firing until it stopped moving, even if it took 2 full charge packs. Some of them did not stop after 2 full charge packs. The first major assault came at 0300 hours. Cultist infantry, massed, crossing the kill zone in waves. The first wave died on the wire. The second walked over the bodies of the first. The third reached the parapet. Guardsman Tail Forsook, 19 years old, 6 weeks out of basic training on Cadian, killed his first man with a bayonet at 0317 hours. The man was wearing a mask made from another man's face. Forsook fixed this in his memory because Sergeant Davin had told him to remember the first one. that if you forgot the first one, the rest stopped being people. The assault was repelled by O for 30 hours. The 114th lost 41 men. The cultists dead numbered in the hundreds, and none of the officers could explain where they had all come from. Because the morning before, there had been no massed force in the forward areas. The Archenemy did not file movement reports. Stand to at dawn. Every man on the fire step, weapon ready, watching the grey nothing of no man's land for movement. 1 hour. Then breakfast, if there was breakfast. Then work. The trenches required constant maintenance. The mud moved. The walls slumped. The duckboards sank. 2 hours of digging and shoring every morning, regardless of shelling. Then watch rotations. 4 hours on, 4 hours off. Sleep when you could. The noise made sleep difficult. The cold made sleep difficult. What you had seen made sleep difficult. Latrines were cut into the rear wall of the communication trenches. Using them at night alone was discouraged after day 19, when Guardsman Palvect was found in the morning with his throat opened and his lasgun missing. No enemy infiltration was ever confirmed. The commissar logged it as misadventure. Nobody believed it was misadventure. The artillery exchange lasted 9 hours. Both sides shelling simultaneously, the ground shaking without pause. The noise so constant, it stopped registering as noise and became a pressure behind the eyes. 3 sections of trench collapsed. 11 men buried. 7 recovered alive. 4 recovered dead. 2 not recovered. After the shelling stopped, the quiet was worse than the noise. Forsuk wrote a letter to his mother that he knew would not be sent. The regimental post had been suspended 2 weeks earlier when the courier Valkyrie was shot down over the eastern approach. He wrote it anyway and kept it folded inside his breast pocket beneath the copy of the Imperial Creed. He had not opened the creed since day 8. The sorcery came without warning. A section of trench 200 meters to the west ceased to exist, not shelled, not collapsed. The men in it were present one moment and gone the next. 12 guardsmen, no crater, no blood, no sound. The trench walls were intact. The equipment was still on the hooks. The mess tins were still on the ledges. The men were not there. The commissar reported it upward. The priests spent 4 hours performing rites of cleansing, and then the section was reoccupied because there was no other option. The men assigned to it were told nothing. They knew anyway. Word moved faster than orders in the trench. Sergeant Davin was killed by a Losbolt through the throat during a routine dawn stand 2. A single shot from an estimated 800 meters. The sniper was never located. Davin had survived the siege of Karalax, the Veranthi incursion, and the purge of Salome. He was 43 years old. Forsuk was given his stripe that afternoon. Commissar Vek said 3 words during the ceremony. Hold the line. Forsuk was now responsible for 9 men. 3 of them were younger than him. 7 iron warriors came at midday. Siege pattern warplate, siege hammers and combi bolters, walking across no man's land through the loss fire of 4 full sections, as though it were rain. They hit the parapet in 2 places, simultaneously. What followed lasted 11 minutes, and cost the 114th 62 dead and 38 wounded. Forsuk's section held their position and poured fire into the closest Marine's eye lens, from 4 meters until the lens cracked and the fire went through. 11 charge packs, 2 las pistols, 1 grenade, 1 Marine. The other 6 were brought down by weight of numbers and a sentinel walker that came up the communication trench and raked them from behind with its autocannon. The sentinel's pilot, a woman named Grath, was pulled from the wreckage by 4-6 men after the last Iron Warrior tore the cockpit apart before going down. She survived. Reinforcement arrived at 0600 hours. 12 Ultramarines moving through the rear area toward the forward line. The men of the 114th watched them pass from the fire steps in silence. Each one was 8 feet tall. Each one moved without sound despite the weight of full power armor. Each one looked at the trench, at the men, at the mud and the wire, and the dead still waiting to be retrieved from no man's land, and said nothing. Forsuk had been awake for 31 hours. He had not eaten since the previous morning. His flak armor had a bolt-round impact crater on the left pauldron that the armorers had not had the materials to repair. His lasgun had been fired so many times the casing was warped around the emitter and the shots were pulling left. One of the Ultramarines paused as he passed Forsuk's section. He looked at the trench, he looked at the men, he looked at Forsuk, then he walked on. Forsuk climbed back down from the fire step, checked his charge pack, and returned to his rotation. He had 9 men to keep alive. That was the job. The Helvian Line held. The central refinery district was never taken. The flayed king withdrew his forces on day 108. The reasons unknown. The retreat sudden and complete. Of the 2,000 guardsmen who landed on Veranthos, for on day 1, 912 were alive on day 108. Of those, 231 were wounded beyond return to active service. The regiment was reformed, reinforced, and redeployed 6 weeks later. Corporal Tail Forsuk was 20 years old. He had fought on 3 worlds and had not yet seen a single one of them.